Thank our youth choir this morning for so beautifully leading us in worship. I want to thank you for being here. Even before the offering is taken this morning, I want to thank you for your rich generosity in your giving. Small portion of our offering this morning will go to buying Becky Ramsey some new Christmas ornaments. I felt terrible for her. We can't do that with the offering. I'm sorry, Becky, but I'm going to find her a moose on a bell ornament because that's got to be broken. In her book, A Wardrobe from the King, author Barit Kos shares the story of an art contest, and contestants in the art contest were asked to visually depict to the best of their ability what peace would look like. There were a host of paintings unveiled at this particular competition. None of them were very impressive. There were only two left. The first of the two was uncovered. It was a mirror-smooth lake reflecting lacy green birches. Under the soft blush of an evening sky on the bank of that lake was a flock of sheep grazing undisturbed, and people thought, surely this is the winner. Finally, we have one. And then the final painting was unveiled in the story. It was a painting of a tumultuous waterfall cascading down a rocky precipice. Stormy gray clouds were painted above it, just about to burst with lightning and wind and rain. On the cliff beside the waterfall was a spindly little tree that was gripping the rocks of a cliff. On one of its branches that reached out in front of the torrential water, a little bird had built a nest in the bend of the branch, and she was sitting with her eyes closed over her eggs, just waiting for them to hatch. And that was the first place painting. Peace. Now, this is the second Sunday of Advent, the Sunday of peace, but the peace expressed in Mark chapter 1 is not the kind of peace that we typically think of. But as Christians seek peace, we often find that we find it in a strange place, and so it shouldn't surprise us in Mark 1. A strange place to find peace in the middle of a wilderness with a man like John the Baptist, but as Christians, we find peace in strange places. A bird resting in her nest, nestled on a branch on a spindly tree against a cliff in front of a waterfall. Or as Mark 1 chapter 4 says, John the Baptizer appearing in the wilderness, and all the people from the Judean countryside and all the people from Jerusalem going out into the wilderness to be baptized by him. Now, the image that's presented in this Christmas story from Mark, because that's as close to Christmas as Mark gets, is one of people leaving the security of their homes and leaving the security of the suburbs and leaving the security of the synagogue and leaving the security of the temple and going into the wilderness to find some sense of peace in their life. Peace in strange places. I watched the movie Santa Claus is Coming to Town this week, the Rankin Bass animated classic, which is better than Rudolph, better than Frosty the Snowman, in my humble opinion, and all the other Rankin Bass movies. This is the one that explains all the mysteries of Santa Claus. Have you all seen this one, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, with Winter Warlock and Burgermeister Meisterburger and Kris Kringle and Jessica Kringle? We're on the same page. We learn why he wears a red suit and how his reindeer are able to fly and why he lives at the North Pole. And the reason Santa lives at the North Pole is because he first delivered his toys to a place called Sombertown, but the mayor there, whose name is Burgermeister Meisterburger, had outlawed toys and didn't want toys in the town, but Santa Claus kept delivering toys to the town, and so Santa Claus became an outlaw, and he hid for a while in the Whispering Woods, but he ran out of places to hide there, so he and all of the Kringles elf friends move up to the North Pole to find some peace. You feel well informed now, don't you? The North Pole and peace. It's amazing how we find peace in strange places. Places the rest of the world would consider barren at best, like the North Pole, or tumultuous at worst, like a bird nest on a cliff in front of a waterfall. I've sat with numerous people through the moment of their death. Only a few have been cognizant right up to their death. Edith was one of those. Her family was in a frenzy around her. A ministry intern was with me who was so nervous he was asking about the Atlanta Braves game the night before and who got hits and who didn't. She smiled at me in the middle of all that, literally moments before her death, and she said, "They're all in a tizzy, aren't they?" And I said, "Yes, they are." And then she said to me, "Jim, I'm fine. Death is a peaceful place to be for the one who is dying." Peace in strange places. Next Sunday morning, our choir is going to present the Christmas portion of Handel's Messiah. It is going to be a worshipful gift to God and to this congregation. We're going to hear wonderful prophetic words sung. You know, one of my favorite songs is "For Unto Us a Child is Born." It goes like this. It's the one that goes, "For unto us a child is born," and then later on the men go, "Born," and then they go, "And his name shall be called." And I know people are called everywhere else, but in choral classical music they are called. "And his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Almighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." And I would sing the rest of it to you, but then you wouldn't have to come next week. Was that an adequate promotion? Vivian said, "Be sure and promote the Messiah next week." So, an adequate promotion. Yeah, the music was written by Handel. Those particular words were written by the prophet Isaiah. He wrote those words when the armies of Babylon were pressing against the edges of the boundaries of Israel, waiting to burn down the city of Jerusalem. And he wrote, "His name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." Peace in strange places. It's the Apostle Paul who wrote, "There is a peace that passes all understanding that keeps our hearts and minds through Christ Jesus." He wrote those words while he was in prison. Peace in strange places. It shouldn't surprise us that at the end of this season we are going to find a baby in a manger in the middle of a busy little town during tax season. Peace in strange places. But our kind of peace is not just found in strange places, it is also found in strange practices. And so not only do the people go out to the wilderness to find this peace, but when they get there, verse 6 says, they found John clothed in camel's hair with a leather belt around his waist, eating locusts and wild honey. Strange practices. Kendra Plating, our interim youth minister and now part-time minister of pastoral care, is going to be ordained on January the 18th here in our worship service. We were talking at staff meeting about our own ordinations, and we realized that our own ordinations, we received one of two things, either a robe or a chalice and paten for the serving of communion. Why? Because people expect us to either dress funny or serve communion. Those are the things we do. For John, it's camel's hair clothing, locusts and honey. Peace in strange practices. We don't think oddly of these things, but for people outside the faith, some of the things we do are just strange. Some of the things that bring peace to our life is just strange. In Steven Spielberg's historic masterpiece, Schindler's List, many of you have seen it, Oskar Schindler employs Jews to work in his military factory, manufacturing ammunition for the Nazi military. And in the middle of this military factory, in the middle of a Holocaust, in the middle of ghettos and abuse and murders, one particular Friday afternoon, Oskar Schindler reminds the rabbi, it's Sabbath. And you remember in the middle of that dark movie, they stop all the machines, and they light a Sabbath candle, and they pour wine, and they eat bread, and they pray together, and they chant together, and they sing together, and we get a glimpse of peace in strange practice. I saw it here last month. Our church spent 4 weeks discussing our relationship to the LGBT community. I think many expected that conversation to have two sides pitted against each other, screaming voices at microphones, Bible verses being spewed to support whichever side you happen to be on, but not here. We decided to move into what was called a discernment process, centuries older than Robert's Rules of Order. It was the preferred practice of decision-making by Baptists for centuries and by Christians in the book of Acts. It was beautiful. Over 200 people showed up every Sunday afternoon. We sat in circles of 8 to 10. We shared our stories of how the church has ministered to us, how we've all been given a place of grace and space in this church despite the journeys we've been on or the struggles of our particular lives. We explored how we could best share God's love with the world and how we could be a church that holds diverse views and love each other well. And even when differing opinions were shared in those circles, and I watched them be shared, everyone listened and nodded and honored what the other person said, understood where the other person was, and to a T, all 4 sessions ended with people hugging, with tears, with smiles, with a sense of real community. I thought as I left that practice, in a world that loves to picket and argue and posture and blame and build arguments by tearing other people down and claim the Bible and God for themselves, we found peace in a strange practice. Holy conversation, spiritual discernment. I spent some time at a monastery years ago. I'm not going to share which one with you because I'm trying to protect the innocent. Is that okay? I rose each morning early to pray with the brothers. I worked with the brothers through the day. I ate with the brothers. I sang with the brothers. I worshiped with the brothers. But each day when communion was shared, I was not served because I'm not Roman Catholic. Or even worse, I am a christened Roman Catholic who has become a Protestant, and that puts me in the bad graces of the church. This went on for days. My last night there was a knock on my door in what is called my cell, or my little room. I opened the door, and one of the brothers, one of the lesser brothers, had a paten with bread on it and a goblet of wine. And I looked at him, and before he could say a word, I said, "You know you can't do this. The abbot, the father, the head of the monastery would forbid it." And he said, "I'm willing to risk setting the rules aside. You are my brother. You have served with us. We've seen the reality of your faith. We've all received the same grace. We love the same God. I want to share communion with you." Peace in strange practices. You are my brothers and sisters. All of you. All of you. And in this season of peace, I want to share communion with you.